Good evening, everyone. On behalf of Modak Junior Academy, I extend a warm welcome to all of you to today's International Building. I'm your host Prituli Modak, and it is my privilege to moderate this thought-provoking session on the topic Strait of Hormuz, a nexus of oil and power politics. The Strait of Hormuz is one of the world's most strategically significant maritime corridors, carrying a substantial share of global oil and energy supplies. Beyond its economic importance, it remains a focal point of international diplomacy, regional security, and great power competition. Understanding its geopolitical significance is essential for comprehending contemporary global politics. We are honored to have with us our esteemed speaker, Dr. Meenakshi Rai Ghosh, a distinguished academic and researcher in the fields of international relations and geopolitics. Her academic work focuses on strategic affairs, global politics, security studies, and contemporary geopolitical developments. Through her research and scholarly contributions, she has enriched discussion on international security and global power dynamics. Today, Dr. Ghosh will help us explore how the Strait of Hormuz has evolved into a crucial intersection of energy security, regional rivalries, and international power politics, influencing not only the Middle East but the global economy as a whole. We are delighted to have her with us and look forward to gaining valuable insights from her experience. Without any further delay, I invite Dr. Meenakshi Rai Ghosh to deliver her keynote address. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Preeti, for the wonderful introduction. And also thank you, Modak Trainers Academy, for giving me this 1 hour session on this hot topic, the Strait of Hormuz. And also Gargi Madam and Ganesh Sir. So without any further ado, I would like to proceed with the topic. The Strait of Hormuz, a nexus of oil and global power play. Now, distinguished guests, colleagues, and esteemed peers, if you look around us today, any global news cycle, flip to any financial network, scan any geopolitical briefing, or sit at any energy summit, one name dominates the conversation today: the Strait of Hormuz. Today, everyone is talking about this narrow stretch of 21 miles of water. It is widely recognized as one of the world's critical choke points in the Indian Ocean, a vital artery where a single tremor can send shockwaves through the global economy. Now, let's take a brief pause and step back, because this wasn't this way. From a quiet transit point to a strategic weapon a few years ago, to the untrained eye, the Strait of Hormuz was viewed to many as any other routine trade route on the map. It was a logistical given, a quiet highway for tankers moving quietly from the Persian Gulf to the open ocean. The world took its stillness for granted, but where the West saw it as a routine transit zone, Tehran saw an unprecedented lever of global political defiance. Iran understood something the rest of the world was too comfortable to notice: the sheer raw strategic significance of its own backyard. They realized that he who controls the narrow gateway was the thermostat to the global economy. Now, I would like to share my screen.
Hello, madam. You are not audible. Please wait, there is some technical issue.
Sorry for this network
Okay, okay.
issues.
Continue.
I'm just keeping my video closed while I'm proceeding to share my screen instantly.
Yes, yes.
Am I audible?
Yes.
If you see the first slide, this is the Strait of Hormuz. If you can see, it is a cobweb of shipping lanes, oil pipeline, and gas pipelines. And it is the important region in the Persian Gulf. Now, this is where the action is taking place today. Now, in the Persian Gulf, there are the 8 countries which are Bahrain, Iran, Iraq, Oman, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates. Now, the Strait of Hormuz contains about 27% of the global oil trade and 22% of global LNG network. So, this is where the entire action is taking place today, and this is the point of discussion today. Now, after from 20th February 2026 came the turning point with the execution of Operation Epic Fury. Now, Iran shattered the status quo in one swift, calculated maneuver. They captured the entire world's attention by turning this maritime corridor into a geopolitical chessboard. Now, perhaps the most striking chapter of this story is not Iran's audacity, but the West's blindness. But superpowers like the United States, with all its intelligence apparatus, naval dominance, and economic foresight, completely missed calculating the true impact of this vulnerability. They underestimated the leverage, they misread the intent, and by the time the gravity of Operation Epic Fury set in, the global power dynamic had already shifted. The US and its allies were left reacting to a reality they should have anticipated. So this brings us to our session today, the Strait of Hormuz, a nexus of oil and power play. We are not just here to look at a map. We are here to analyze a choke point, how a choke point has become a stranglehold. We will dissect the intelligent failures, the energy dependencies, and the volatile power plays that define our current reality. How did we get there? What happened next? And who truly holds the power when the oil stops when the oil stops flowing? So before starting and getting further, I would like to clear one concept which I'll be using continuously. That is the concept of asymmetric warfare. Now, what is the concept of asymmetric warfare? Asymmetric warfare is a conflict between two belligerent with vastly unequal military power resources or tactics. Here we have the United States on one side and Iran on the other. The weaker side uses unconventional strategies like the guerrilla tactics, cyber warfare, inexpensive drones to exploit the superior power and its vulnerabilities. So this is one of the main reasons for this is that militarily it cannot win directly. So, but it can prolong the conflict and inflict disproportionate political and economic cost. Now, the Strait of Hormuz today represents one of the most acute intersection of physical geography, global energy dependence, asymmetric geopolitical power in the modern international system, functioning as a narrow maritime corridor that separates the Islamic Republic of Iran from the Arabian Peninsula. The strait measures a mere 29 miles across its most physically constrained navigable point. Despite its minimal geographic footprint, this sliver of ocean has historically operated as a structural backbone of the global economy. Prior to the severe global geopolitical ruptures that defined the early 2026, the passage facilitated unhindered transit of approximately 20 to 25% of the world's seaborne crude oil, alongside a staggering 25% of global liquefied natural gas (LNG) supply. For decades, this corridor has been a single, irreplaceable exit point for seaborne exports originating from major energy producers including Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Oman, United Arab Emirates, Kuwait, Qatar, and Iran. Historically, geopolitical and macroeconomic analysts have viewed the Strait of Hormuz exclusively through the lens of hydrocarbon logistics and energy security. But if you look at it from the contemporary strategic environment, it has a much more multifaceted and nuanced understanding of this vital geopolitical node. The cascading crises that erupted in early 2026 has demonstrated that the waterway is no longer just merely an energy corridor. It has evolved into a highly critical node for global agricultural stability, handling one-third of the world's seaborne fertilizer trade. Furthermore, it has emerged as a deeply vulnerable digital. Furthermore, it has also evolved as a digital global agricultural stability, handling about one-third of the world's seaborne fertilizer trade. The systematic across heavily interconnected global markets. The ongoing military standoff, characterized by dual naval blockades imposed by the United States, Iran, and the unprecedented weaponization of the maritime transit through extortion of commercial tolls and novel threats directed at subsea digital infrastructure, underscores a profound vulnerability in the architecture of global trade. When the physical flow of critical commodities and the digital flow of global data are simultaneously threatened by regional military conflict, localized disputes instantly metamorphose into a synchronized global macroeconomic crisis. This comprehensive analysis provides an exhaustive examination of a 2026 Strait of Hormuz crisis, exploring its military origins, its devastating impact on global energy and food security, asymmetrical threat to undersea cable network infrastructure, and the subsequent supply chain reconfiguration forced upon the international economy. If you see the next slide, this is about the Operation Epic Fury, which targeted an unprecedented geopolitical rupture, permanently altering the regional balance of power. This Operation Epic Fury was launched by a coordinated effort launched by United States and Israel on February 28, 2026. Now, driven by escalating regional tensions regarding Iran's advancing nuclear programs, as well as extensive long-term support for regional proxy militias across the Middle East, the coordinated operation aggressively targeted over 900 locations throughout the 40-day joint bombing campaign. Also, the primary strategic objective of the campaign was the immediate destruction of Iran's offensive ballistic missile capabilities, the degradation of naval infrastructure, and the systematic dismantling of its nuclear production facilities to ensure the prevention of nuclear weapons acquisition. The opening salvos of this campaign resulted in the death of Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, and also the top leadership of the Iran, political and military leadership of Iran. The scale and intensity of the military engagement was historically significant because, according to an assessment published by the United States Congressional Research Service, this 40-day joint bombing campaign resulted in about 42 US aircraft spanning fixed wing fighter jets, helicopters, uncrewed aerial systems being either completely lost or severely damaged. The high rate of attrition indicated the unexpected resilience and intensity of the Iranian air defense network and retaliatory capabilities. A highly notable casualty of the operation was the loss of the United States KC 135. Now, what is the KC 135? This is an aerial refueling aircraft which was lost over the Iraqi airspace on March 12, 2026, which tragically resulted in the death of all its crew members on board. Now, the legal justification of this massive military intervention was heavily debated within the international community. But the United States State Department formally articulated its legal rationale through multiple communications to the United Nations Security Council on March 10, 2026. According to the statement, the United States engaged in the conflict under the framework of collective self-defense of its Israeli ally, responding to an ongoing international armed conflict that has been escalating actively for years. Now, the legal argument emphasized the immediate and present danger posed by Iran's illicit nuclear program, coupled with its expanding ballistic missile delivery system, as well as its direction of proxy groups carrying out destabilizing attacks against international targets, including commercial vessels exercising transit rights through the Strait of Hormuz. Now, the immediate retaliation for this extensive airstrike and leadership assassination, the Iranian state launched a massive barrage of retaliatory missiles and drones strikes targeting the US embassies, military installations, and critical oil infrastructures, including commercial vessels operating in the Strait of Hormuz throughout the broader Middle East region. Simultaneously, the IRGC, which is the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, swiftly asserted direct military control over the Strait of Hormuz. Within hours of the initial Allied attacks, the IRGC broadcasted explicit warning via VHP radio to all commercial vessels operating in the vicinity, declaring that the maritime passage was strictly prohibited and effectively transforming the world's busiest energy corridor into a highly contested dead zone. Now, let us see what happened during this 2026 transit collapse. This is when the entire commercial shipping stood still. In the early 2026, the escalating geopolitical friction culminated in a near total halt of the commercial tanker traffic throughout the Strait of Hormuz. Now, the daily ship transit plummeted dramatically between February and March 2026. If you target 7th March, catching the entire global supply chains completely off guard. Now, it started as a cascading of effect because the shipping companies were forced to halt transit or entirely or face the economically bruising alternative by rerouting the entire fleets across the Cape of Good Hope. Now, this rerouting added thousands of miles to voyages, creating instant supply bottlenecks and massive supply chain delays. Now, immediate military escalation rapidly devolved into a protracted war of economic attrition, fundamentally characterized by competing asymmetrical naval blockades that fractured the normal maritime traffic separation zones. On April 13, 2026, the United States Armed Forces, under the command of the directive of the President of Donald Trump, who is the supreme commander of the military and the senior military leadership within the US Central Command or the CENTCOM, initiated a formalized naval blockade specifically targeting the Iranian ports. The underlying US strategy aimed to completely isolate Iranian macroeconomic system by physically stopping the vehicle from entering or leaving the Iranian territorial water. Now, in this slide, you can see that the difference between the US naval blockade as well as the Iranian asymmetric blockade. This is basically a comparison for us to understand what was really happening during this time during the blockade. The utilized force deployed east of the Strait of the Gulf of Oman, the US military actively redirected commercial ships and intercepted suspected violators. Official estimates indicated that the blockade effectively intercepted dozens of vehicles, imposing a direct economic cost on the Iranian state estimated at $500 million daily. Simultaneously, Iran utilized its asymmetric geographic advantage completely. It obstructed transit through the narrow confines of the Strait of Hormuz. The IRGC engaged in a direct harassment of international maritime traffic, systematically laying sea mines within the transit corridor and launching projectile attacks on the commercial vessels attempting to navigate the passage. The lethal reality of this blockade was underscored in early March 2026 when the oil tanker Skylight was struck by an Iranian projectile north of Qasab in Oman, resulting in the tragic death of 2 Indian crew members and injuring 3 others. The Iranian warnings and the subsequent physical attack on commercial vessels prompted major global shipping firms to entirely suspend the operation in the strait, causing tanker traffic to plummet by approximately 70%, as over 150 massive vehicles dropped anchor outside the choke point to avoid extreme military risk. Now, the crisis introduced a novel administrative weapon, that is the commercial transit toll, directly threatening established international maritime law. Now, beyond utilization of the physical naval interdiction and the kinetic strikes, the Iranian state introduced a highly controversial and unprecedented administrative weapon to the conflict, that is the commercial transit toll. Leveraging a newly formed entity known as the Persian Gulf Strait Authority, the Iranian lawmakers and its military officials declared an official intent to charge transiting shipping companies and even technological firms millions of dollars in fees for the right of safe passage. This policy essentially treated the international maritime state as a sovereign Iranian territory. Reports rapidly emerged indicating that Iran was extorting tolls ranging from $1 million to $2 million per vessel for shipping entities that required urgent navigation through the corridor during the height of the crisis. Now, this bold strategic maneuver directly creates a challenge in the established framework on the United Nations Convention on the Laws of the Sea. Now, under the parameters of UNCLOS Part 3, the Strait of Hormuz is universally recognized as a strait used for international navigation. Consequently, the legal principle of transit passage applies, which explicitly guarantees unimpeded surface, submerged, or overflight transit for all nations. Now, the imposition of commercial tolls and the demand for Iranian issue transit permit constitutes a fundamental violation of international maritime law. By attempting to institutionalize control over the strait through a formalized coercive toll system, the Iranian government is seeking to establish a novel legal and geopolitical precedent. If successful, This precedent uh, will invite parallel sovereign extortions in the other vulnerable Indo-Pacific choke points, not only the Strait of Malacca, the Taiwan Strait, and also the Bab-el Mandeb. Now, despite this rigid rhetoric surrounding the dual blockades, the physical enforcement of these restrictions proved to be highly complex and occasionally porous, driven primarily by absolute inelastic necessity of global energy flows. Through intense diplomatic backchannel and assumption of immense financial risk and the payment of exorbitant war risk insurance premium, certain commercial vessels successfully navigated this highly contested strait during the peak of the crisis. Now, my next slide shows the global share, the synchronized violent shocks across both global crude and the LNG gas market. Now, to appreciate the sheer dependency, let us look at the commodity breakdown passing through this single artery. We are not just talking about raw oil. Now, the Hormuz handles about a staggering 38% of all global seaborne crude, which dictates the benchmark price of Brent crude worldwide. This also accounts for 29% of LNG, which millions of households in Asia depend for basic daily survival. According to that, 19% of the LNG, 19% of refined oil products like diesel, gasoline, and 13% of global chemicals for agricultural fertilizers pass through this strait. So when you look at this matrix, you realize that blocking the strait does not shut down the gas station, it turns off the industrial power. Now, my next is that this energy bottleneck instantly translated rising commodity cost into severe domestic inflation and sovereign default risk. Now, let us discuss it in details. Now, the situation on the water has evolved into highly complex and competitive maritime blockade. On one side, you have the United States-led allied naval forces establishing blockade to enforce international shipping restrictions and target vessels suspected of breaching sanctions. On the other side, you have Iran has countered with an asymmetric toll booth strategy, demanding aggressive transit fees, seizing commercial vessels, and mining standard maritime traffic zones. But what makes this conflict incredibly modern and dangerous is the heavy electronic warfare currently blanketing the Persian Gulf. The ships are literally vanishing off the maritime radar because of the intense GPS jamming and spoofing. To compound this, Iran is using this maritime chokehold as an absolute diplomatic leverage, publicly stating that they will reopen the strait only after a permanent peace deal is signed. Now, this energy shock, when the shipping traffic halts, energy markets react with violent speed. As soon as the 2026 disruption escalated, Brent crude prices instantly surged past the $90 per barrel. But that is just the tip of the iceberg. Energy economists and market analysts warn that if this closure becomes prolonged, the downstream refined products like jet fuel, diesel could skyrocket to a catastrophic $300 per barrel. Why? Because the cost of doing business has fundamentally changed. Because the naval skirmishes, the ship seizures, the increase in war risk premiums all have skyrocketed out of control and drastically driving up the final landed cost of oil. These soaring energy costs feed directly into global inflation, hitting everything from the manufacturing sector to regular household budgets worldwide. Now, the next is the economic clock of war, the energy market and the macroeconomic shocks. Asian vulnerability. The core vulnerability is that there is a massive geopolitical irony at play in the Strait of Hormuz. While the Western naval assets, primarily the US Navy, are the ones funding and patrolling the waters to secure freedom of navigation, the actual commodity passing through the overwhelmingly uh, chaotic strait is destined for the east. Over 80% of the oil exiting the Hormuz is bound for the Asian market. If you look at the core demand hubs, China absorbs a massive, irreplaceable percentage of this energy flow. Meanwhile, Japan, India, South Korea rely on the strait for 84% of their crude and 83% of their LNG. Now, this impact of this crisis felt directly in the East. For example, South Korea has been already forced to activate emergency energy response task forces to manage the supply risk and protect its industrial infrastructure. The most immediate, upon initiation of the major hostilities and subsequent physical closure, the straight international markets you have seen have reacted to extreme volatility. Simultaneously, the spot prices for global liquefied natural gas (LNG) experiences an astonishing spike of 74% within the first 2 weeks of the conflict. Brent crude prices rapidly breached the critical $90 per barrel threshold, eventually peaking at a staggering 126 barrel in the United States domestic market. This specific supply disruption differs fundamentally in its architecture from historical global energy shocks. For example, during the 1956 Suez Crisis or the infamous 1973 oil embargo, the 2026 crisis stranded not only immense volume of crude oil, but also 20 to 25% of the total global LNG trade. This dual commodity blockage created an unique just-in-time fragility that modern global energy security architectures were completely ill-equipped to manage and mitigate. Market analysts and leading economic institutions issued stark warnings that a prolonged absolute closure of the strait could inevitably push prices for highly refined middle distillates such as diesel, aviation jet fuel past the $300 per barrel. Such escalation would virtually guarantee the onset of synchronized deep global economic recession, severely curtailing industrial output and crippling international aviation and freight transport. Now, highly exposed Asian economies, which rely heavily on the strait of 84% of their crude and 83% of the LNG, bore the brunt of the initial shock, prompting nations like South Korea to immediately activate emergency response to task forces and manage the deficit. Next is the asymmetric burden on the economy. The profound ripple of this energy bottleneck propagated instantly across the entire global macroeconomic landscape, exposing deep structural vulnerabilities. The crisis fundamentally altered delicate external balances of import-dependent nations, translating rapidly rising global energy costs directly into severe domestic inflation and corresponding currency depreciation. According to sophisticated financial modeling conducted during the crisis, every sustained $10 per barrel increase results in the global oil prices directly trims the gross domestic product or the GDP growth in highly exposed emerging markets like India by zero point 0.1 to 0.2 percentage point. while simultaneously pushing aggregate domestic inflation by 0.2 percentage. For emerging markets and developing economies, the specific timing of the 2026 shock is nothing short of catastrophic. For many developing nations already grappling with the exceptionally high post pandemic debt service burdens, highly constrained access to international finance, and severely limited domestic fiscal space. As the underlying cost of bunker fuel, maritime freight rates, and international war risk insurance premiums skyrocketed, the final landed cost of all imported essential goods surged exponentially. This pervasive inflationary pressure essentially forced domestic central banks to maintain aggressively high interest rates or raise borrowing costs further to defend depreciating currencies. Consequently, this dynamic triggered a rapid capital flight from emerging markets, leading to corresponding and a dangerous spike in sovereign bond yields. Now, beyond the hydrocarbon, we have the transmutation of energy shocks into the agricultural crisis. Now, the next what we will discuss is the fertilizer and the food nexus. When we are discussing the maritime choke points, people often mistake it focusing entirely on oil. But the crisis in Hormuz is far more than an energy shock. It is an impending global food security crisis. Why? Because nearly one third of the entire global seaborne fertilizer trade transits right through this volatile corridor. Historically, global food prices move in near perfect lockstep with crude oil. So, when energy costs spike and the cost of manufacturing and transporting agricultural inputs skyrockets, this sudden chokehold on Middle Eastern fertilizers mean that agricultural yields in developing import-dependent nations will plummet, triggering a terrifying wave of cascading food inflation, supply scarcity for some of the poorest populations on earth. So, while the international political attention and mainstream financial markets predominantly fixated on the soaring price of crude oil, the most profound, far reaching, structurally damaging long term consequences is within the global agricultural sector. The architecture of modern global food system is intensely reliant on the continuous application of synthetic nitrogen fertilizers, a highly complex supply chain that begins fundamentally with the extraction of natural gas. If you look at this slide, you will see the Haber-Bosch disruption. Now, what is this? Through this energy, this is an chemical process where hydrogen is extracted from natural gas, methane, which is combined with atmospheric nitrogen to produce ammonia. Now, this ammonia serves as the foundational, irreplaceable ingredient for manufacture of urea and virtually all the other commercial nitrogen-based fertilizer. Now, the Persian Gulf serves as a primary centralized global hub for this specific chemical production. Crucially, approximately one third of the world's total seaborne fertilizer trade must physically transit the Strait of Hormuz to reach this global agricultural market. So, in absolute terms, this represents over 16 billion tons of essential agricultural inputs, heavily weighted towards urea, which constitutes 67% of this volume, alongside massive quantities of diammonium phosphate, DAP, and monoammonium phosphate, MAP. When this narrow waterway was abruptly closed due to military action, the massive flow of sulfur, ammonia, and refined phosphate from the Middle East was immediately paralyzed. The market reaction was instantaneous and devastating. The spot prices of urea surged drastically, climbing from an average of $490 per ton to over $700 per ton practically overnight. Seeing the impeding structural deficit, major alternative global fertilizer producers, namely China and Russia, immediately enacted aggressive export restriction to safeguard their own agriculture sectors, causing rapid compounding tightening of the global market. The Food and Agricultural Organization of the United Nations classified this cascading chain reaction not merely as a temporary logistic delay but a systemic agri-food shock capable of triggering a massive synchronized global food crisis within 6 to 12 months. The UN World Food Programme subsequently projected that the sustained elevation in essential energy and fertilizer inputs could push an additional 45 million people globally into acute life threatening hunger. The severity of this dynamic is best observed through the intensely localized impact on populous agricultural dependent developing economies, especially India. So, when the Gulf shipments completely halted, major fertilizer plants, manufacturing plants across South Africa, South Asia, which rely almost entirely on imported Gulf natural gas and immediate ammonia as essential feedstocks, were forced to significantly curtail their domestic operations. Government officials in the key agricultural states like Maharashtra confirmed that local fertilizers plants were operating at merely 50% of their standard capacity due to the total absence of raw material shipment. The system specific timing of the geopolitical disruptions are aligned disastrously with the vital spring plantation season in the northern hemisphere. I have given an example of Vikramgarh in Rajasthan. In this highly vulnerable rural region in the market town of Vikramgarh, severe and prolonged shortages of urea and other critical inputs have left millions of smallholder farmers entirely unable to fertilize essential cash and subsistence crops such as seasonal eggplant, for example. Farmers, for example, 68-year-old Dattu Jatesh Shingra, whose entire livelihood depends on a 1.5-acre plot, was the inability to procure fertilizer during the strict biological window of the crop development represents an existential financial threat. This widespread agricultural paralysis serves to drastically exacerbate pre-existing rural economic distress, with the foundational cost of farming rising due to the simultaneously expensive diesel fuel and the incredibly scarce fertilizer. Farmers are forced into an impossible calculus, significantly to reduce planting acreage, apply insufficient nutrients, resulting in catastrophic yield drops, or shift entirely to the lower yield, lower cost crops. The inability to access essential agricultural inputs translates directly into a rural financial collapse. Ultimately, the devastating fertilizer shock demonstrates the extreme uncompromising inelasticity of agricultural input. With global populations can temporarily reduce discretionary travel or out of fuel consumption patterns in response to oil price spikes, but biological crops, for example, cannot be deferred or paused. Thus, an energy security failure rapidly metastasizes into a dire national security and fundamental food sovereignty crisis. This crisis has aggressively highlighted a long-term necessity for transitioning agricultural practices to biofertilizers, nanotechnologies, and regenerative farming. The next is the geopolitical conflict that has expanded in the ocean surface of the seabed, explicitly weaponizing the invisible digital architecture of globalization. Here you have the top layer, which we are seeing that the vessels cannot transit the strait daily. And in the bottom layer is, which is the current scenario, which is the digital economy, which is at risk. That is the seabed reality. Now, the most alarming and the structurally novel evolution in 2026 is the aggressively expansion of geopolitical conflict from surface of the ocean down to the seabed. The entire modern global economy is fundamentally underpinned by vast invisible network of submarine fiber optic cables that carry over 95% of the international data traffic. This immense data flow encompasses everything from basic consumer internet communications to highly sensitive military intelligence transmission, cloud computing infrastructure, and trillions of dollars in daily high frequency financial transactions. So, geographically, the Persian Gulf and the Strait of Hormuz function as a hypercritical digital choke point that physically connects Europe, Africa, Asia. At least 17 major submarine cables transit through the contested waters of the Red Sea and the Persian Gulf. Notably among them are the massive data arteries like the AAE-1 Asia, Africa, Europe cable system, which connects points from Hong Kong directly to Italy and France, as well as the Falcon system, the Gulf Bridge International Cable, and all of which must navigate this narrow, confined water of the Strait of the Hormuz. This passage also controls about a third of India's westward internet traffic, which cannot be rerouted due to supply constraints on alternative routes. The worsened security scenario has also disrupted ongoing repair operations. Now, this has also resulted in the business disruption, which could potentially delay India's 272 billion data center ambition and to make the country a cloud service export hub. For instance, Meta Platform had selected Mumbai and Visakhapatnam as the landing sites for the India leg of this multi-billion-dollar undersea cable project. Waterworth, Google was also expected to land its Blue Raman subsea cable on the Indian shores connecting West Asia and Europe and Asia. So, data centers have become one of the casualties of war. Recognizing this utterly catastrophic economic and social damage that a sudden digital blackout can cause to its geopolitical adversaries, Iranian state has explicitly weaponized its physical presence of these cables, closely mirroring its controversial strategy of charging physical transit for crude oil tankers. The IRGC and prominent Iranian lawmakers have initiated public discussions to impose mandatory permits and exact massive annual fees from major Western technology corporations, mainly naming entities like Google, Meta, Microsoft, Amazon. The stated justification was that these companies must pay for the right to maintain fiber optic lines running beneath what Iran aggressively claims as its exclusive sovereign offshore territory. This strategy represents a profound paradigm shift in conduct of asymmetric warfare, but explicitly threatening to sever vital undersea cable if this technical tolls and maintenance fees is not paid. Iran has successfully shifted the focus of international leverage from pure physical commodities to the invisible digital infrastructure powering modern globalization. Global telecommunication experts note that exacting tolls on submarine cables is historically unprecedented and essentially functions as a form of international extortion, achieved solely through the credible threat of destruction. The shallow waters of the Strait of Hormuz make cables particularly susceptible to harassment operations via manned or unmanned underwater systems, deliberate anchoring, dragging, or intentional sabotage executed by commercial vessels posing as benign fishing trawlers. This precedent for this type of catastrophic damage was clearly established in the Red Sea, where Houthi-linked incidents resulted in 3 major cables being severed in early 2024, following by 4 additional cables suffering damage in 2025, severely impacting global connectivity. Now, what is the main nightmare? The main operational nightmare is the deep water cable repair. Now, the geopolitical threat of international cable severance is massively compounded by the profound lack of physical maintenance resilience in the region. When a submarine cable is damaged accidentally during peacetime conditions, the average repair window for a deep water fault is 40 days. So you can imagine operating within an active, highly militarized war zone. Cable construction and repair operations grind to an absolute and indefinite halt. Specialized maintenance Specialized maintenance vehicles simply cannot safely navigate or hold position in the contested waters without risking deadly military strikes. Currently, the telecom infrastructure in the Middle East relies almost exclusively on the United Arab Emirates company E-Marine for its physical cable maintenance. To mitigate this extreme risk, telecommunication operators are urgently transitioning towards proactive behavioral monitoring, during which what is identified as prevention window, a period of suspicious vessel behavior that precedes actual physical damage. By fusing real-time automatic identification system, data, satellite imagery, and advanced fiber sensing technologies such as distributed acoustic sensing and state polarization analytics, operators attempt to detect vehicles loitering intentionally, going dark by disabling AIS or dragging massive anchors near the cable route. Implementing these automated risk alerts directly into the network operating firmware. The physical closure and extreme militarization of the Strait of Hormuz has mandated highly inefficient reconfiguration of established global shipping lines. Commercial vessels were forced to avoid the risk of Persian Gulf and the contiguous Red Sea and were rerouted around the Cape of Good Hope. This massive geographical displacement has added weeks of transit time to standard voyages, drastically increased maritime fuel consumption, elevated non-conflict war insurance premium, and heavily strained global supply of available shipping containers, essentially removing massive amounts of capacity from the global logistic network. Now, this displacement has resulted in severe bottlenecks. For example, in India, major facilities like the Jawaharlal Nehru Port Trust, JNPT, and the Mumbai Port faced crippling congestions as rerouted vessels bunched together, continuously overlapping their scheduled arrival windows. Peak operation utilization at certain container terminals quickly crossed the critical 90 to 95% threshold when terminal yard density exceeded the 90% mark, and standard operational buffers completely vanished, leading to massive inefficiencies in container stacking, increased handling times, and severe gridlock. The intense congestion resulted in berth waiting times between 24 to 72 hours, with outboard departures surging to an unprecedented 118%. This situation was even more dire at the Mundra port in Gujarat, which faced a staggering delay of 49 days. This profound logistical friction immediately triggered a cascade of severe financial penalties for domestic importers and exporters. As containers exceeded the allotted free times while trapped in congested yards, shippers were hit with aggressive detention charges, severely impacting their working capital rotation. Now, the border crisis also is there resulted in structural shortage of heavy trailer drivers at the container freight station, effectively paralyzing vital inland evacuation route and directly threatening the continuity of India's highly lucrative export-oriented sectors like textile, engineering goods, specialized agricultural products like mangoes, and the immensely valuable diamond cutting and polishing industry. Next, we come to the pharmaceutical vulnerabilities and the operation control towers. Now, with the complete breakdown in the maritime logistics pose an existential threat to the highly regulated temperature-sensitive supply chains within the critical pharmaceutical and biotechnology sector. The global healthcare industry relies heavily on highly predictable transit time to ensure the chemical efficacy of sensitive active pharma ingredients and finished medical products. The 2026 crisis stranded massive quantities of critical medical supplies in transit, prompting global health organizations and logistic providers to highly expensive alternative logistic models. Now, we have also seen that the 2026 crisis is an historical inflection point, which is demanding that the 2026 crisis is a historical inflection point demanding the multinational corporations and state abandon their hyper-optimized single-node supply chains. So, for example, in the energy and hydrocarbon sector, excessive reliance on volatile maritime choke points resulted in global disruption. Now, what is the radical thing? Diversification is the construction of massive overland pipeline redundancies bypassing the Gulf. Next is the agricultural stability, concentration of fertilizer production in limited geopolitical zones. For example, we have seen lack of agricultural fertilizer supplies. What we can do is acknowledging fertilizer as a national defense priority and transitioning to localized biofertilizers and regenerative farming. Digital infrastructure, the vulnerability of the subsea cables to targeted disruption and regional control. We can develop a redundant, dispersed subsea data network to eliminate seabed hostage taking by the regional powers. And maritime sovereignty is that the acceptance of unilateral sovereign toll permits threatening of the freedom of navigation. So there should be an absolute international rejection of sovereign toll permits to prevent this type of copycat blockades happening in the other choke points of the Indian Ocean and the Indo-Pacific region. For example, like the the Strait of Malacca, the Bab of Mandeb. Now, I have been talking about the Bab of Mandeb. So this is also a very crucial choke point between Yemen on the Arabian Peninsula and Djibouti and Eritrea in the Horn of Africa. This is also a vital gateway for shipping between the Indian Ocean and the Mediterranean Sea via the Suez Canal. But physical geography still commands ultimate authority over global stability. Resilience now requires structural redundancy. So I have come to the end of my discussion. Now, there are certain developments which have took place, which have the crisis, which many people, many of you might have known, have seen in the newspapers. India has now reviving an ambitious 40,000 crore billions undersea natural gas pipeline, which directly connects the Oman with Gujarat, namely the Middle East India Deep Water Pipeline. Now, this is designed to bolster India's energy security, completely bypassing the geopolitically volatile Strait of Hormuz. India has entered into a comprehensive. India has also entered into a partnership with Oman. Now, why is Oman very much important? Oman is important because two important points: the Salah and the Dokkum port completely bypasses the Strait of Hormuz, so it is free from entirely geopolitical tensions. And this agreement has come into effect from June 1st, 2026. But to if anyone asks how long this Strait of Hormuz is going to be go on, it's extremely unpredictable, because escalations have taken place today, and both sides are totally hell bent on maintaining their own status quo. But peace agreement needs to be reached. For this, I have shown that how this is affecting not only oil and crude LNG, it is affecting agriculture, it is affecting the digital autonomy, it is affecting the entire scenario. Thank you so much. I would like to specially thank Gargi Madam of Modak Trainers Academy and Ganesh Sir for constantly supporting me and giving this opportunity. Thank you so much.